This is going to be a tutorial on how to mix up materials and how to put on special effects like changing colors. Alright, so I have my default screen. I'm going to go ahead and go into my shading tab. I'm doing this so I can get to my node window. This is the grouping of boxes that you see right here. Now, in your homework, you should have already watched Nodes for Noobs. This is going to be a bit of a review for that. But I have my material output. Think about this like the head of the material. If I were to not have this, my material would not work. If you cut off somebody's head, the body will no longer cease to function. So here is my material node setup. I have the default principled shader. Now you have learned that you can just change the base color and that's going to change the color. We've talked about metallic, we've talked about specular, and we have talked about roughness. So now we're getting into some of the special effects. So I'm going to go ahead and press Shift A, and I'm going to go to texture, and I'm going to put on a texture on my cube. So let's go ahead. I'm going to just do a checkerboard. And I'm going to change the colors just because. Ooh, that's ugly. Okay. Alright, so here is my texture setup. This is going to be a procedural texture, meaning it is not something that you draw out of, you bring out of Blender. It's something within Blender. These textures are generated mathematically. Alright, so I can change the color here. I can change the scale. As you can see that I have plugged this into the base color. Anytime that you have images, plug them into the base color or the color bar if you're using another shader. Alright, now when it comes to reading our node tree setups, this is going to be a bit contrary to what your homework said, but I like to read them from right to left. So this would be my head, then we have the shader, and then we have any special effects. Alright, so let's say that I want to mix things up. So I'm not just stuck with one shader. I can actually put in more than one shader. And in order to do this, we're going to do something called a mix shader. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift A, and I'm going to search for mix shader. Alright, now what a mix shader does is it mixes two shaders. So you see how this is in green? This is a shader. So let me say that I want this to be an emission. So now I have brightness coming from my cube, my checkerboard cube. And let's go ahead and up to strength a little bit. I might put this into, let's put some bloom. Alright, there. Now you can really see what's going on. Alright, so right now we have, actually I'm going to bring that down so you can see. Alright, so right now we have a blending of the two nodes. Now take a look at your mix shader. You can see that it has two shader slots. One is your principled shader and one is my new emission shader. For the most part, it does not matter which, if you put it on top or bottom, or even if you cross strings like this. Alright, so what controls this is going to be the factor. Alright, now if I slide my factor all the way to, let's do to 0, it's going to be 100% the principled shader with my checkerboard. If I slide it all the way to 1, it's going to be completely my emission. So I like like to just slide it until I get the certain effect that I want. Alright. Now, let's do something else. Let's go ahead and do another principled. So, with the node setups, you can actually Shift D and duplicate. And that's just a nice time saver. So let me make this really, really ugly. So I'm going to put another texture on here. I'm going to put, let's do a Veroni. So color to base color. Alright, so it is all sorts of messed up. And you can just get, I know it's not making any sense right now, but you can get some really interesting textures going on if you mix two shaders. Alright, so actually I am going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this one off. So you can see that, let me go ahead and delete that, and that's X. So now I have the base color, and I have my Veroni, which is giving me sort of like the stained glass look. Now let me put it to 1 to really show off what it's doing. So if I mix the two of them together, you can see how it has a yellow overtone, which may be something that I want. Also, I'm just going to take this off. So technically this is a mixed shader, but the only thing it's working with right now is going to be the principled shader with the Veroni. So there's certain special effects that you can do. So if I go Shift A and I go to color, let's say that I want this to be brighter. So I can do a brightness contrast. I can up the contrast and really make this really bright and in your face. Now, when I put any color special effects between the principled shader, and I want it between that and my procedural textures. So any special effects, any color special effects, you would put it in between these two. So I could also go hue and saturation. So I could change the hue, and you can see how it's changing the colors. I can change the saturation. This is going to be the brightness of the color. See, if I desaturate it, it turns it completely black and white. If I oversaturate it, it starts to look like highlighters. Now, I already had some brightness and contrast from this node, but now it's really in your face. Alright, I can change the value. If I put the value all the way to 2, it's going to make it really light. If I put the value all the way to 0, it's going to turn it black. So this is just some ways to change what it looks like. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that and reattach my color. Alright, so another thing that you can do with the color ramp, with the colors, is going to be using a color ramp. Now, let's see, let's go ahead and type in color ramp. So what this does is this gives you the ability to control the colors that are going to be in your either image or procedural texture. So I have two colors going on here. I have a black and I have a white, and between the two it's giving me grays. So let's go ahead and change it to pink, and I don't know, let's do red. So it's giving me shades of pink and red, and this is just another way of manipulating how your image works. And we're using this with procedural textures right now, but just realize that you can use this with image textures, and you'll learn about that in the next tutorial. Alright, So just what you need to take away from this is the fact that you can mix shaders, that you need to put any procedural textures onto the base color, and if you go into the color section of the node groups, and that was Shift A and color, any of these as well as the color ramp, you need to put them between these two, the shader and the procedural texture. Alright, that's it.